Picture this, the unforgiving plains of 1880s Texas, where a woman's worth was measured by her ability to bear children and keep a household running. Now imagine losing everything that defined your purpose in a single, devastating moment. What happens when the very people who should support you turn their backs and whisper cruel words behind closed doors? This is the story of Margaret Sullivan, a woman who discovered that sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places, wrapped in nothing more than a simple blue ribbon and a stranger's kindness. But before we dive into Margaret's incredible journey of heartbreak and hope, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You won't want to miss the powerful stories we share every week about resilience, redemption, and the human spirit. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Broken Arrow Ranch as Margaret Sullivan sat motionless on the edge of her narrow bed, staring at the empty wooden cradle in the corner. 3 weeks had passed since little Thomas had taken his last breath, and the silence in the small cabin felt heavier than the Texas heat. At 26, Margaret had already endured more loss than most women twice her age. Her husband, James, had died in a cattle drive accident just 2 months before their son was born. The baby had been her lifeline, her reason to keep breathing when grief threatened to drown her. Margaret, the sharp voice of Mrs. Abernathy, the ranch owner's wife, cut through the morning stillness. "You can't stay in there forever, girl. There's work to be done." Margaret opened the cabin door to find Mrs. Abernathy standing with her arms crossed, her face set in its usual expression of disapproval. "The other wives have been talking," Mrs. Abernathy said without preamble. They say you're useless now. Can't keep a husband alive, can't keep a baby breathing. What good are you to this ranch?" The words hit Margaret like physical blows. She'd heard the whispers, seen the way the other ranch wives looked at her with a mixture of pity and suspicion. "I can still work," Margaret whispered. "I can cook, clean, tend the garden. Can you? Because from where I stand, all you've done is mope around like a ghost. The other women are picking up your slack, and they're not happy about it." Margaret felt her cheeks burn with shame. Since Thomas's death, she'd barely been able to function. Simple tasks felt insurmountable. "I need you to understand something," Mrs. Abernathy continued. "This ranch operates on everyone pulling their weight. We can't afford dead weight, no matter how sorry we feel for someone's circumstances." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you have 1 week to prove you can be useful again, or you'll need to find somewhere else to go." That afternoon, Margaret forced herself to join the other women in the communal kitchen. The conversation died the moment she entered. "Well, look who decided to join us," said Sarah Mitchell, the wife of the ranch foreman. "We were just discussing the upcoming harvest festival. Of course, that's something for families to enjoy together." The barb found its mark. Margaret's hands shook as she reached for an apron. "Maybe Margaret could help with the cooking," suggested young Emma Rodriguez, the newest bride on the ranch. "Oh, I don't think that's wise," Sarah replied quickly. "Remember what happened to the Hendersons' baby after eating something from a grieving woman's kitchen. Some say grief can poison the food." Margaret's face went white. The superstition was cruel and baseless, but in a community where infant mortality was already high, such beliefs took root easily. That evening, Margaret sat alone in her cabin, staring at a letter from her late husband's brother in Kansas. He couldn't offer her a place in his home. His wife was expecting and couldn't handle the stress of housing a woman with such unfortunate luck. She was folding her belongings into a carpet bag when she heard a gentle knock. When she opened the door, she found herself face to face with Daniel Abernathy, the ranch owner's son, recently returned from the war and recently widowed himself. "Mrs. Sullivan," he said, removing his hat respectfully, "I wanted to offer my condolences for your loss. I know what it's like to lose someone precious." Margaret was so surprised by the genuine kindness in his voice that she nearly started crying. "Thank you. That's very kind of you to say." Daniel's eyes fell on the carpet bag behind her. "Are you planning to travel somewhere?" "I'm leaving tomorrow. Your mother made it clear that I'm no longer welcome here." Something flickered across Daniel's face, surprise, then anger. She said that to you? She's not wrong. I haven't been useful lately. The other women think I'm cursed. It's better if I go. Where will you go? I don't know. But I'll figure something out. Mrs. Sullivan, what did you do before you married? What skills do you have? I was a teacher, actually, in Missouri. I can read and write, do arithmetic. I taught children from ages 6 to 14. Daniel's eyes lit up. A teacher? We don't have a school here on the ranch, but we should. There are at least a dozen children who could benefit from proper education, but the other women don't make decisions about ranch operations. My father does, and when he's not available, I do. He paused. What if I told you there might be another option? A way for you to stay and contribute something truly valuable. What do you mean? Give me until tomorrow evening. Don't leave just yet. Let me talk to my father and see what we can arrange. As he turned to leave, he reached into his vest pocket. I almost forgot. I brought you something. He pulled out a simple blue ribbon. It belonged to my late wife, Catherine. She would have wanted another woman to have it, especially someone who understands loss. Margaret took the ribbon with trembling hands. It was soft silk, the color of a summer sky. Thank you. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything. Just promise me you'll wait until tomorrow before making any final decisions. That night, Margaret slept better than she had since Thomas's death. The blue ribbon carefully placed on her nightstand, where she could see it in the moonlight. Margaret woke before dawn, her heart racing with anticipation. She dressed carefully in her least worn dress and braided the blue ribbon into her hair. You're looking mighty fancy for someone who's supposed to be leaving today, Sarah Mitchell commented as they worked in the vegetable garden. I'm waiting to hear about a possible opportunity. Margaret replied carefully. Before Sarah could respond, young Emma Rodriguez appeared. Margaret, Mr. Abernathy wants to see you in his study. Right away. Daniel met her at the front door, his expression unreadable. He's waiting for you. Mr. Abernathy's study was filled with leather-bound books and maps of Texas. The ranch owner sat behind a massive oak desk, studying a piece of paper. Mrs. Sullivan, he said without looking up. My son tells me you were a teacher before you married. Yes, sir. For 3 years in Missouri, and you can read and write well. Do arithmetic? Yes, sir. I taught children from primer level through 8th grade. Mr. Abernathy finally looked up. Daniel has proposed something interesting. He thinks we should start a school here on the ranch. Says it would benefit not just our workers' children, but might attract better families to work for us. Margaret's pulse quickened. That sounds like a wonderful idea, sir. The question is whether you're up to the task. Teaching ranch children isn't the same as teaching town kids. These children work from dawn to dusk. They're rough around the edges. I understand, sir. But I believe every child deserves the chance to learn. Mr. Abernathy leaned back in his chair. Daniel also tells me you've been having some difficulties with the other women. Something about them thinking you're bad luck. I know there have been some concerns. Superstitious nonsense. I don't run this ranch based on old wives' tales. But I do need to know that you can handle the responsibility. I can handle it, sir. I want to handle it. The ranch owner studied her, then nodded slowly. All right. Here's what I'm prepared to offer. We'll convert the old bunkhouse into a schoolroom. You'll teach Monday through Friday. In exchange, you'll receive room and board, plus a small salary. Margaret felt tears prick her eyes. That's more generous than I could have hoped for. There are conditions. First, you'll live in the teacher's quarters we'll set up in the schoolhouse. Second, you'll report directly to me about the children's progress. And third, if this doesn't work out, we'll revisit the arrangement. I understand completely, sir. Thank you for this opportunity. As they walked toward the old bunkhouse, Daniel fell into step beside her. How do you feel? Grateful. And terrified. It's been years since I taught. You'll do fine. I've been watching you, Mrs. Sullivan, even in your grief. You're kind to the children you encounter. The old bunkhouse was simple but solid, with good windows for light and a stone fireplace for warmth. We'll need to clean it out. Bring in desks and supplies, Daniel said. I can have some of the men help with the heavy work. Margaret stepped inside, already envisioning the transformation. We'll need a blackboard, chalk, slates for the children. Books, of course. Make a list. I'll ride into town next week and see what I can find. Daniel, she said suddenly, then caught herself. I'm sorry, Mr. Abernathy. I shouldn't be so familiar. Daniel is fine. We're going to be working together on this project. I wanted to ask, why did you do this? Why did you convince your father to give me this chance? Daniel looked out the window toward the rolling hills. Because I know what it's like to feel useless. After Catherine died, after I came back from the war, I felt like I didn't fit anywhere. People looked at me with pity or fear or both. He turned to face her. But the truth is, we're not broken, Mrs. Sullivan. We're just different than we were before. And sometimes being different is exactly what a place needs. That evening, Emma Rodriguez visited with a covered basket. I brought you some fresh bread. I wanted to congratulate you on the teaching position. Thank you. That's very kind of you. Emma sat down, her young face earnest. I also wanted to tell you that Carlos and I will definitely be sending our children to your school when they're old enough. We both believe education is important. I also wanted you to know that not everyone believes those awful things Sarah and the others have been saying. Some of us know that grief doesn't make a person dangerous. It just makes them human. After Emma left, Margaret sat holding the warm bread, feeling overwhelmed by the kindness. She touched the blue ribbon in her hair, remembering Daniel's words about his late wife wanting another woman to have it. For the first time since losing Thomas, Margaret Sullivan felt like she might have a purpose again, and perhaps that would be enough to build a new life upon. The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. Margaret threw herself into preparing the schoolhouse with surprising energy. Each morning, she arrived before sunrise, scrubbing floors, washing windows, and organizing the space. Daniel proved invaluable, coordinating with ranch hands to move out old bunks and bring in tables. When Margaret mentioned needing a blackboard, he disappeared for a day and returned with a beautiful slate board, boxes of chalk, slates for children, and an armload of books. Where did you find all this? Margaret asked, running her fingers over a McGuffey reader. The school teacher in Millerville was retiring. When I told her what we were doing, she insisted on selling me her entire collection at a fraction of the cost. Said she was happy to see the books going to children who needed them. There's something else, Daniel said, pulling out a wrapped package. She sent this specifically for you. Inside was a leather-bound teacher's manual, filled with lesson plans and encouraging notes. On the inside cover, someone had written, "To the new teacher at Broken Arrow Ranch, may you find as much joy in teaching as these children will find in learning. Eleanor Hartwell. I don't even know this woman, but she's shown me more kindness than people I've lived alongside for years." As word spread, Margaret began receiving unexpected visitors. The blacksmith brought his 8-year-old daughter Mary to meet her future teacher. "Mary's bright as a whip," Thomas Brennan said, "but she's had no proper schooling. I'm hoping you can help her reach her potential." Mary was serious, with intelligent dark eyes. When Margaret showed her the books, the girl's face lit up. "I can already read a little," Mary said proudly. "Papa taught me from the Bible." "That's wonderful. We'll build on what you already know." Not all interactions were positive. Sarah Mitchell appeared while Margaret was hanging a map, her expression disapproving. "I see you're really going through with this," Sarah said skeptically. "The school opens Monday. Are you planning to send your children?" "Hardly. My boys don't need book learning to work cattle. Besides, I'm not comfortable with them spending time with someone who's had such unfortunate experiences." Margaret set down her hammer. "Mrs. Mitchell, I understand you have concerns, but I want you to know that I would never do anything to harm a child. Teaching is about nurturing young minds, so you say. But grief does strange things to people, makes them unpredictable." After Sarah left, Margaret sat heavily on a student bench, feeling the weight of ongoing suspicion. Daniel appeared shortly after. "Don't let her get to you. Sarah Mitchell has always been suspicious of anyone who doesn't fit her narrow view. But what if she's right? What if I'm not ready for this?" Daniel sat beside her. "Can I tell you something about grief? It doesn't make us dangerous. It makes us deeper. It teaches us empathy, compassion. Those aren't qualities that harm children. He gestured around the schoolroom. Look at what you've accomplished in 2 weeks. You've transformed this space while dealing with your own pain. That takes strength, not weakness. Sunday evening, Margaret stood in her completed schoolroom, making final preparations. She'd prepared lessons, arranged supplies, and picked wildflowers for the windowsills. Everything was ready except her nerves. Daniel knocked, holding a small wrapped package. I wanted to give you this before tomorrow. It's a good luck gift for your first day. Inside was a beautiful wooden ruler, carved with elegant script. Miss Margaret Sullivan, teacher. You had this made for me? I thought you should have something that marked this new beginning. Margaret ran her fingers over the carved letters. I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done. You don't need to thank me. Just be the teacher I know you can be. As he turned to leave, Margaret called out, Daniel, why did you really do all this? He paused. Because when I came back from the war, when Catherine died, I felt like I was drowning. I needed someone to throw me a lifeline, to show me there was still purpose to be found. He faced her. You needed that lifeline too. But more than that, this ranch needed what you have to offer. Sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected places. After he left, Margaret sat at her desk, holding the wooden ruler and looking at the empty student desks that would be filled tomorrow. She touched the blue ribbon in her hair, thinking about new beginnings and the possibility of building something meaningful from loss. Monday morning arrived with a spectacular sunrise. Margaret stood at the schoolhouse door, wearing her best dress with the blue ribbon woven through her braided hair, watching families make their way across the ranch yard. Thomas Brennan arrived first with Mary, who clutched a slate and looked excited and nervous. Miguel Rodriguez came with Emma, who gave Margaret an encouraging smile. One by one, children filed in, some eager, some reluctant, all curious. By the time Margaret rang the small bell Daniel had hung outside, she had 12 students ranging from 6 to 14. Good morning. Students, Margaret said, standing before the blackboard with her wooden ruler. Welcome to Broken Arrow Ranch School. I'm Miss Sullivan, and I'm honored to be your teacher. Mary Brennan's hand shot up immediately. Miss Sullivan, is it true that you can teach us to read any book we want? With practice and patience, yes. Reading opens doors to every story ever told, every piece of knowledge ever written down. The morning passed smoothly. Margaret divided children into groups based on reading levels, starting the youngest with letter recognition, while challenging older students with complex texts. Miguel proved as bright as she'd suspected. During lunch break, several parents lingered near the schoolhouse. Margaret invited them in. Please feel free to look around. Education works best when families and teachers work together. Most parents seemed pleased, but Sarah Mitchell stood apart, skeptical. It's all very pretty, Sarah said loudly. But what practical use is all this book learning for ranch children? Carlos Rodriguez spoke up. With respect, Mrs. Mitchell, my nephew can already work with his hands. But if he can also read and write, he'll have choices in life. Education gives children options. Exactly right, added Thomas Brennan. I want Mary to have opportunities I never had. The afternoon session went even better. Margaret introduced older students to arithmetic and discovered several had natural mathematical abilities that had never been developed. As the school day ended, Margaret felt deep satisfaction. This was what she was meant to do. She was cleaning the blackboard when she heard angry voices outside. Through the window, she saw Sarah Mitchell talking with other ranch wives. It's not natural, Sarah was saying. A woman who's lost her own child, trying to mother other people's children. No good will come of this. Daniel appeared at the door, his face serious. I heard there was some trouble today. Not trouble exactly. Just ongoing concerns from some parents. Margaret, I need you to know that my father and I are completely satisfied with how today went. We've already heard positive reports from several families, but what about the negative reports? There will always be people who resist change. The question is whether you're going to let their fear stop you from doing what you're clearly meant to do. Margaret sank into her chair. Sometimes I wonder if they're right. Maybe I am trying to fill a void by teaching other people's children. Daniel pulled up a student chair. Can I tell you what I saw today? I saw a woman who had found her calling. I saw children excited about learning for the first time. Margaret, grief doesn't disqualify you from caring for children, it qualifies you. You understand how precious life is. You'll treasure these children in a way that someone who hasn't experienced loss might not. Over the following weeks, the school settled into routine. Margaret's students made remarkable progress, and word spread to neighboring ranches about the quality of education available. The breakthrough came during the third week, when Margaret organized a demonstration for parents. Students read aloud, solved arithmetic problems, and recited poetry. The pride on parents' faces was unmistakable. Even skeptical families began to soften. When Sarah Mitchell's youngest son expressed interest after watching the demonstration, Sarah found herself in an uncomfortable position. "Maybe we could try it for just a few weeks," Sarah said reluctantly. Margaret graciously accepted Billy into the school. Within days, it became clear the boy had natural aptitude that had been overlooked. Soon, Sarah was bragging about her son's achievements. One evening in late October, Daniel appeared carrying a lantern and wearing a smile. "I have news. My father received a letter from the Territorial Education Board. They want to make this an official part of the regional education system. That means government funding and a real teacher's salary." Margaret stared in amazement. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. You've built something remarkable here." As they stood in the lamplight schoolroom, Margaret felt overwhelmed by gratitude. She touched the blue ribbon in her hair. "I need to tell you something. That first night, when you brought me this ribbon, I was planning to leave the next morning. I had given up completely. I know. I could see it in your eyes. That's why I had to do something. But why? Why did you care what happened to me?" Daniel looked out at the star-filled sky. "Because I recognized something in you that I'd seen in myself. The look of someone who had lost their way, but still had something valuable to offer. The ribbon. It wasn't just a gift, was it? It was a lifeline. Maybe it was both. Catherine always believed that our most difficult experiences prepare us to help others through theirs." As winter approached, the school continued to thrive. Margaret's reputation spread throughout the region, and families began moving to the area specifically for the education opportunity. On a cold December evening, Daniel knocked with an unexpected visitor, Mrs. Eleanor Hartwell, the retired teacher from Millerville. "I had to see for myself what you've accomplished," Eleanor said, looking around with approval. "The reports I've been hearing are remarkable. I couldn't have done any of it without the foundation you provided." Eleanor smiled. "My dear, I may have provided the tools, but you provided the heart. That's what makes a true teacher." As Eleanor prepared to leave, she pressed a small package into Margaret's hands. Inside was a beautiful hand-carved sign, Broken Arrow Ranch School, Miss Margaret Sullivan, teacher where every child's future begins. The next morning, Daniel helped Margaret hang the sign beside the entrance. As they stepped back to admire their work, Margaret touched the blue ribbon one more time. "Thank you for seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself. For giving me a chance when no one else would." Daniel smiled. "Thank you for proving that sometimes the most broken people are exactly what a place needs to become whole." As students began arriving, Margaret stood in her doorway, watching children run across the ranch yard with books and excitement. She thought about Thomas and knew that while she would always grieve, she had found a way to honor his memory by nurturing other children's dreams. The blue ribbon fluttered in the morning breeze, a symbol of transformation, of second chances, of the unexpected ways that kindness can change everything. Margaret Sullivan had learned that sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of another, and there you have it. Margaret's incredible journey from despair to purpose, from isolation to belonging. Her story reminds us that our darkest moments don't define our worth, and that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can completely transform a life. Margaret's blue ribbon became more than just a simple gift. It became a symbol of hope, resilience, and the power of human compassion. In a world that had labeled her as useless, she discovered that her greatest trials had actually prepared her for her most important calling. If Margaret's story touched your heart, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. We share inspiring stories of courage, redemption, and the triumph of the human spirit every week. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that their story isn't over. Sometimes the most beautiful chapters are yet to be written. What did you think of Margaret's transformation? Have you ever experienced a moment when someone's unexpected kindness changed your entire life? Let us know in the comments below. We love hearing your stories too. Until next time, remember, you are never as broken as you think you are, and you are never as useless as others might claim. Sometimes you're exactly what the world needs, exactly when it needs you most.